Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and for this episode I am joined by Darius Brubeck. Yes, he's a Brubeck. He is the oldest son of... As part of the preparation for this interview, I have read the new book, which is out now, called Playing the Changes, Jazz at an African University and on the Road by Darius Brubeck and Catherine Brubeck, his wife. And I've also watched the film Playing the Changes, which tracks his life and is absolutely fascinating. I can only recommend that you watch the film when you get a chance and that you read the book if you're interested in music and politics, how bending the rules can sometimes bring huge change. And what Darius Brubeck and Catherine as well achieved in South Africa is incredible. What you're listening to right now is a track called Piecemeal, and that is taken from the album We Have Waited Too Long by the Jazzanians. So this album has been brilliantly remastered and reissued, originally released in 1988. And the Jazzanians was a band of really super talented South African students at the University of Natal, Durban, where Darius Brubeck launched the first university jazz studies course in South Africa in 1984. So this is recorded 4 years after that. And it's been re-released by Ubuntu Music, partly as a celebration of that work that Darius and Catherine Brubeck did. And it's quite extraordinary. I hope you enjoy listening to some of this music. So I hope you enjoy listening to my conversation with Darius. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on my podcast. I'm really honoured. And first of all, I have to say that I'm not honoured because you're Dave Brubeck's son. I'm honoured because of what you have done in South Africa. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's an incredible story.
Oh, thank you, Hilary. Yeah, Kathy said you had a link to the film.
I know.
Which is a very exclusive privilege, I must say, because it's on the festival circuit now and it's only licensed for festival showings. But the book, you must have the South African edition with the blue cover, right?
No, I have an advanced reader's version.
Ah, okay. I don't even have that.
Oh, well, when I come to see you play, I shall get you to sign it for me.
Okay. All right. Great. So you have the international edition.
Yes.
University of Illinois Press is officially releasing it on July 9th.
Yeah. And I am going to recommend everybody to watch the film wherever they can and to read the book, because this is an absolutely incredible story that actually couldn't have happened at any other time. And I think it's totally unique, you know.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say couldn't have happened at any other time. That's something I really try to emphasize it was like um, a lot of things just synchronized in a beautiful way, culturally, politically. I couldn't have done it if I were very much older or very much younger, but I was just in a place,
Yeah.
kind of at a pivotal point, along with Kathy, where we had connections. I had an ongoing career as a player and as an academic. We knew the right people, many of whom are retired. That's one of the reasons I couldn't have done it later, many of whom are retired now, and
Yeah.
so forth. And we had such wonderful students to work with that made it really worth the effort. You didn't feel like for a minute like any of the things that we were advocating might turn out to be a waste of time, because they just weren't.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you, for the sake of my listeners who haven't read the book or watched the film, can you give us a brief outline of what happened when you, because you kind of went in the back door, didn't you, when in Durban?
Yeah,
It's,
playing the changes, jazz at an African university and on the road, tells the story of how my wife, Catherine, who is a co-author and is a South African, um, my wife and I started the first university level official jazz course in South Africa. And we went there in 1983, which was officially during times of apartheid, that only officially ended in 1994. We went to a university that, and I think I should make this clear because a lot of people would assume the opposite. It did admit Black students, but the conditions for admission were such that in a practical sense, it excluded them, because secondary education was very poor, and they had to have a certain level of what was called matric back
yeah.
then. And a lot of the best musicians in South Africa were not musically literate. If you put a part in front of them, they'd just ask you to sing it for them, which I probably couldn't do, but they could memorize it instantly if I could
Right.
play it on the piano. Um, so getting people into university, first of all, meant creating accessibility. And then after it was accessible, these people had no money.
No.
And actually, South African students are reasonably well supported if they are qualified students. It's not like the US. It's not like, you either pay or you just don't go. There is support, but those students have to earn subsidy by being qualified, and the standards are relatively high for that compared to just the general educational level. So forgive me for droning on about what are essentially administrative matters, but these were major challenges. And when you talk about going in the back door, well, from seeing the movie, I was appointed as a theory teacher
Yeah.
by a very visionary head of department, Professor Christopher Ballantyne, who knew that he wanted jazz to become an official course. But the first thing was to get both of us on campus. We, create a base and a position. And then, as they said, it's relatively easy to move people around, once, someone is a specialist in music education. They might move into theory or, you know, whatever, but you have to have a basis for being on campus in the first place. So we started in 1983, then the jazz course itself was launched in 1984, and it became really a flagship endeavor of the university, from being something that I wouldn't say the university was ever against it, but there was just a built-in resistance to what was perceived as lowering standards and changing the culture on campus, which was attempting to be kind of a provincial English university. That was kind of what it was attempting to be. But music itself really just broke down a lot of barriers, you know, and the book goes into quite a lot of detail, but I won't here. But once we got these students on campus, we had, apartheid was so thorough that white students were actually meeting blacks on the basis of being fellow students or being peers and equals for the first time. And most were just really, completely transformed by that. There's a lot of testimony to that effect in the book from students. And we started a lot of bands on campus. There was a university big band because that was the model I was working toward, was more like an American university, not a conservatory, but a university with a jazz stream in it. So something like Indiana University or North Texas State, not Berkeley, right? Not where you had a complete specialization. And so, we got a big band going. We got community to fill out the sections, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because I, Joe. All right, to get enough trombone players, for example. We pull in people from the community too. So now we connected with people off campus who really hadn't realized that they could be somehow connected to a university, up and coming students from other departments who hadn't enrolled as music students, but maybe were pretty good at playing trumpet or something in high school, now had a place to go. So we were building out from that core, and then really specialized jazz students who came with a great deal of knowledge, maybe more than you would expect from British or American students now, because they had a background within the townships that were segregated. They were isolated from where white people lived. They were impoverished in various ways, but they had a jazz culture where they learned from their elders. And there is this built-in in African culture, respect for age, sense of community. And they had jazz clubs, which, they weren't Ronnie Scott's. What they meant was like a regular meeting, maybe in someone's garage, who had a reasonably good stereo system, and people would bring records and they'd discuss Monk and Miles and Coltrane, all of the canon, really. And they would come very well informed and really knew what they wanted to learn. And that led to forming a flagship group called the Jazzanians. That had, the Jazzanians CD and vinyl LP are being released through Ubuntu now and remastered I'm getting ahead of the story though in a way, but the Jazzanians um, became, the best of the best.
Right. And
You know, yeah, sorry, I'm
no. It's fine. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that is so lovely about the book is the quality and the quantity of photographs of these, of the people, and the fact that there are there's a real diversity in all senses of the word, both across races, but also genders. There's just people playing music together. They're amazing photographs, a lot of which were your personal family ones, weren't they?
Yeah, that's right. And we had professional publicity photos taken. Yeah, and then a lot of them were just from our own collection. We wanted to preserve all of this because it was fantastically
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah,
And okay, so the Jazzanians really deserve a lot of credit individually and collectively for just coming along at the right moment. It was really a charismatic group. And when I say students, I'm not talking about sort of 19 to 21 year olds. These were there were at least three or four very experienced professional musicians who dropped what they were doing in their lives to come to university to learn, and so they could in turn, teach,
yeah,
properly as they perceived it. And this band was just knockout, as you will hear. And we were invited to the National Association of Jazz Educators conference in Detroit, 1988. And again, the backstory on this is too long for any interview, but it was, as you said, another instance of just, right time, right place, right circumstances. It was politically very controversial, uh, but again, just really good decisions were made instead of being blocked because of what we were doing. It just seemed the right thing at the right time because South Africa internationally was quite embarrassed by apartheid,
yeah,
but domestically, it was supported by the voters who were exclusively white. So they're,
yeah.
so this was what they were dealing with, and what Kathy and I think managed to manipulate very well, because we got backing from the U.S. government, we got free tickets from Swiss Air. The South African government could have stopped us, but didn't, because they thought, oh well, this is, that it's good for people to see this. No one would pay that. The sporting teams weren't allowed to compete internationally, so there was money around for travel and stuff, stuff like that. We had the invitation. Then, on the other side um, of the equation, the Black Caucus of the U.S. Congress had to decide, is this breaking a boycott? Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Right. Yeah.
And,
And
strong arguments both ways.
well,
I'm
absolutely.
defending it for that.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
it came out right. We went to the National Association of Jazz Educators. We played. We, people were so knocked out that three of our students were offered scholarships to do further study in the U.S. on the spot. Actually, four. And the National Association of Jazz Educators renamed itself the International Association for Jazz Education. So there was this great story arc of things getting better and better and better. That gave me leverage back home being in Durban, South Africa. So I immediately got a very offer of a very big promotion, a higher salary, and many people would have considered a better base, the University of Cape Town. And I thought about it, but really what I wanted to do was to build on what I really had already. Things had gone so well. And I had very good advice from some very smart friends, including Christopher Ballantyne and my wife, Catherine, I should say, was a very experienced political activist. She had been national secretary of the Liberal Party. So even though the ANC, which is now the ruling party in South Africa, the African National Congress, was up to that point banned and considered a terrorist organization officially and so forth, she knew how to get through to the right people and talk to them. And, so we were doing fine. And instead of changing that, I asked to establish a center on campus, and that became CJPM, Center for Jazz and Popular Music. And so
it's sorry, can I just stop you for a moment? Because every question that I'd written down that I wanted to ask, you've just answered them as we got through. And one of the key things that I wanted to arrive at was the CJP, the Centre for Jazz and Popular Music, because that's clearly a way of kind of commercializing and allowing people to earn money from playing music so they could support themselves as musicians. That's huge in a country that only, well, in my lifetime, was so separate, that the apartheid was so enforced, wasn't it? And to have established that center is incredible. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, you got to the point maybe quicker than I would have, but it did. Students could perform there. It was also because of what we stood for and our proven track record. It became a destination for international musicians who wanted to perform in South Africa, but didn't want to go to like state supported venues and that sort of thing. And also, we were well organized so that students who performed at the center, if they formed bands that kind of gained some coherence and had, some kind of stylistic message and were good, Kathy and my program administrator, I got someone officially appointed to work with us named Glennis Malcolm Smith, who was just kind of a genius at admin. You don't run across people very often.
Right. No, and that's what you need, isn't it?
Yeah. And kind of a mother figure to a lot of students because she would just help them through financial jams, difficulties with the university or just not being able to buy new guitar strings or whatever. So we had these income generating activities, but it wasn't just playing. Someone who was on the bandstand one week might the following week be part of the cleanup crew, emptying ashtrays but getting paid, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we created a micro economy and organization, and other venues in Durban began catching on that with jazz, you got maybe you didn't get the highest possible revenue, but you got organization, a pretty well-behaved crowd, a pretty wide demographic, uh, age-wise and racially, where it was possible. A lot of people just started ignoring apartheid, and the sky didn't fall.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what from the outside is rightly considered to have been oppression was also not so much through enforcement, but just through ignorance, and
Yeah.
through, and to, well, if everybody could just go everywhere, wouldn't there be chaos? And then they started doing it, and there wasn't chaos, and there wasn't violence, and
Yeah.
So things just started, the whole social life on campus and in Durban and in town and eventually around South Africa had this space that was kind of neutral. I mean, neutral sounds like a negative, but in that situation, it was a positive.
Right.
A space where everyone showed mutual respect, mutual appreciation. There's this music happening. The audiences and the musicians are young, old, black and white. So what? It's fine. It's what the new normal should be. And that's
Yeah.
what it had to consciously represent to people.
Yeah. It's a truly extraordinary story. I went to South Africa in, I don't know, 87, 88 or something. And I was stunned by the, what apartheid looked like, because I
Yeah.
was aware of it, but I'd never experienced anything like that. And from the age of 16, I'd started playing the saxophone, and I was around people of different ages, different colors. It didn't make any, and all of my heroes were older or black, or it was
Yeah.
just, it didn't matter. And so for me, I found it very well. I found it uncomfortable in South Africa. So I can only imagine how the things that you were doing. I guess you worked on that premise of it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for for permission in the first place. So you just kind of do it and hope it works out.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to be careful not, and well, I'm careful. I hope in the book as well as in the interview, the things that we claim to have accomplished sound like big things, um, but I hope I don't come across as boastful,
Not
because
at all.
it was all kind of um, through cooperation and agreements and support of a lot of people. My American accent was a hidden weapon. Always, I would deploy that when being questioned by
Yeah.
police about what I was doing with three black guys and equipment they
Yeah.
didn't understand in a car late at night. And I said, "Oh, what, am I not supposed to be here?"
Right.
um, the and Yeah, so there were so many. I didn't even write very much about this in the book. It was just normal procedure. Just show up and do what we did. Anyone who tried to stop us or had doubts about it knew that they would look bad.
Right.
They knew they would be the ones who, because I'm Darius Brubeck and American, and relatively high status person,
Yeah.
especially in that society. It would be in the press, and who would seem wrong? Someone who objected to me bringing a South African um, Zulu guitar player to a gig in a restaurant that was supposed to be for white people. Who would look bad in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
situation?
One of the things that I think comes across really well in the book is the fact that you are quite happy to use your name
Yeah,
when it is going to make a difference for you, and but more importantly for the other people. I think, for because it must have reflected on them well, that they were playing with part of the Brubeck history, and I think that's a wonderful way of doing it.
yeah.
So what did your dad think of what you were doing? He must have been proud.
Yes, both my parents were really fully supportive, and in ways that go beyond being proud and showing it in various ways, which of course was something that made me feel great. But when we traveled overseas with groups of musicians, they had a huge house in Connecticut, northeast of New York City, and I'm the eldest of six kids originally, so you can imagine it was a very, very big, very modern house. Dave had a huge studio. I mean, so big that he had two concert grands in it, and there was still plenty of room.
Wow.
And they would allow me and uh, you know five, six, seven students to rehearse there and stay, and that they would host them. They
Yeah.
donated money to the what we called the Ronnie Madincella Scholarship, which was a scholarship in the name of a South African singer that was murdered early and during the time that we were there. Um, and and they were at the center of a fabulous network.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And my brothers, Chris and Dan, helped out. There was
Yeah.
one situation where I had a student group that didn't have a drummer because he had a conflict, and Dan played with the group, learned. So, so there was really kind of, good infrastructure on both sides of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of Atlantic crossing or north-south divide, however you put it, with the Center for Jazz, with Kathy and Glennis, and the Brubeck family on the other end, and um, help
Yeah.
from the U.S. State Department. They wanted to be perceived as good guys because, um, well, because America wasn't um, in that the apartheid regime was seen as a bulwark against communism. So
Right.
so the Reagan administration, for example, so kind of supported them. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, there's some deep history in politics, but again, just to get back to your original theme, it was like all of these kind of cross currents that could have been frustrating were just crossing each other or affecting each other in ways that were positive for us, because we were just able to see it and deal with it. The combination of Catherine's expertise and mine just
Yeah.
happened to work together very well.
Yeah. It's brilliant. She seems like a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. She's still the manager of the Darius Brubeck Quartet and Brubeck's Play Brubeck. We just got back from the Bern Jazz Festival. As I mentioned at the beginning,
Yeah.
that was with me and my brother Chris on bass and trombone, Dan on drums, and Dave O'Higgins on sax. And that
Yeah.
group's been going since 2010. And my quartet is based in London. I live in Rye now, but I was in London for 10 years, and I've been privileged to play with the same group of guys since 2006, really, with
Right.
Matt Ridley on bass and Wesley Gibbons, who I originally met in South Africa. Wesley Gibbons on drums.
Right. Yeah. And Dave O'Higgins is one of those sax players who simultaneously sounds old but very modern as well. He's got an incredible, I love his style of playing. I've always enjoyed playing with him.
Yeah, well, me too, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Been doing it for a long time. But I know what you mean. His playing, if we're going to talk about Dave for a while, his well, he's always practicing and learning interesting things. But that's coming from a place of curiosity and how he can apply the latest Jerry Bergonzi theory about pentatonics or something to what he's already doing, which is terrific. But he sounds older in a good way because there's so much detail in his articulation, how and when he applies vibrato, uh, and I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging anyone in particular, but I think a lot of younger players think it's more about notes than it really is. A lot of it is about how you play, and that's
Yeah.
what makes Dave sound like he belongs in the lineage of Dexter Gordon, who is his big kind of exemplar, I would
Yeah.
say. um I
Yeah.
meant Bergonzi on purpose because Jerry is one of the first, maybe the first tenor sax player I worked with. Jerry and I are exactly the same age. I know you play tenor as well, right?
Yeah. Well, and baritone. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
baritone.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I've also played with Jerry Mulligan. So there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I often tell the story about I went to a gig with Jerry Mulligan at the Barbican in
Yeah.
I can't remember 1980 something, and I was sitting on the front row, and because I was sitting on the front row I could hear the sound coming out of his horn rather than through the system. Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. um so it sounds to me as if your whole life has been dedicated to sharing. I mean, Harmonious World is all about people sharing what they're good at, and that's what you've been doing your whole life, clearly, and bringing people up alongside you. I think that's great.
Well, I've been given a lot. I've been given a great platform to start with, and wonderful, wonderful family. I don't want to sound like a sentimental congressman making a speech, but family and marriage are a big part of it. Doesn't have to be for everyone, but I've
Yeah.
been fortunate to have those assets. And being, I think I understand what my level is as a musician. I don't think I'm where the world would be incomplete without me. That and not that kind of prowess or originality, but I'm good at kind of being a conduit for a tradition that I grew
Yeah.
up with. And I decided quite a while ago that my job isn't to keep up with new developments in music. It's just to, although I'm not uninterested, I don't mean it that way.
No, I know what you mean.
But instead of chasing whatever's happening next, just say, well, I'm an ambassador from the mid 20th century.
Right.
That's what I know. And just keep doing it and hope to keep doing it better every time.
Fantastic. That's a perfect place to end, I think. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real honor to talk to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Hillary, and it's been nice talking to you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to my conversation with Darius Brubeck. What you're listening to now is We Have Waited Too Long, which is the title track from the Jazanians remastered album, which is out now on Ubuntu Music. Thank you for joining me once more for Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.